computer, and then I'll just stop it. Susan,
okay.
mute.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Thursdays at 3 with the Jewish Museum of Florida, FIU. For any of you who don't know me, my name is Susan Gladstone, the very proud executive director of the museum. And today we have a very special program with our dear friend of the museum and I like to say personal friend, Marty Kreloff. And before we get started, I want to make a huge thank you to Dan and Merle Weiss, who have so kindly agreed to be the sponsors of Thursdays at 3. So everybody please join me in a big thank you to the Weiss family and a big welcome to Marty Kreloff. And now I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful curator, Jacqueline Goldstein, to begin the program. You're on, Jackie.
I'm on. Let me start with a shared screen so we can pull up some images together. So first, thank you, Susan, for the introduction. I'm Jacqueline Goldstein, curator at the Jewish Museum of Florida, and welcome to today's Thursdays at 3. As we just heard, sponsored by the wonderful and exciting Merle and Danny Weiss. And today we're meeting with Marty Kreloff. And a little bit of background about Marty. He was born in my hometown of New York City. His actually in Brooklyn. Went to school at the famed Erasmus High, which was the basically high school to the stars of Bobby Fischer, Neil Diamond, and Barbra Streisand. And Marty moved down to Miami in 1967 with his family. And Marty, what I'd like you to tell us is initially when you moved down in 67, this is a self-portrait of yours. Is it dating from the 67?
No, this actually dates from 64. I was
Marty, hold off, Marty, for 1 second. We have to unmute the other. There's 2 pictures of you on the site, and for some reason we're looking at the wrong one. Hold on a second. You need to unmute yourself.
I see the photo.
You're still muted. The other one has to be unmuted. Can you tell the one with your picture on it needs to be unmuted?
I'm unmuted on my end.
Well, it's echoing because we're getting the sound from the other one, the other device that you have. So this one needs to be unmuted. All right, let me try something.
Technical difficulties?
Yeah, I'm just gonna unmute everybody for a second. If I can, or let me see if I can unmute Marty from here. It's not letting me unmute him. So Marty, you don't see that other place on your?
My mute button is not.
Because you're coming, for some reason, you're coming from the secondary device and we're getting an echo. Now I can't hear you at all. Unmute yourself again.
Okay, how are we doing now?
Still a little bit of an echo.
Don't know why.
It's exciting. I've never heard an echo on a Zoom.
I studied yodeling.
Okay, well, we're just going to continue and hopefully it'll get better. We'll try a few things while you're.
Someone may have a cell phone on or another computer at the same time on.
I'm going to remove the second one and see what happens. All right, Marty, unmute yourself now. Okay.
Are you there?
Hold on, I'm going to unmute everybody. Nope, he's still muted. It won't let me. Oh, you know what? Maybe if I make him a co-host, I can unmute him. Let's try that. I'm so sorry. We don't usually have these kinds of problems. We've done pretty well so far. Marty, you have to try to unmute yourself again. On the bottom of your screen, do you see where it says mute, a little thing through the... Nope. It's not letting me unmute him. Marty, I think you need to log off and log back on. Let's try that. Are you going to try that, Marty? Okay. Sorry. Jackie, while he's doing that, do you want to talk a little bit till we get Marty back?
Who created what was called Miami Says Art in 1976. And we'll have a bunch of images to show you from that. And what he taught me about that was that there was such a dearth of interest here of cultural things from, you know, from the community, that he created this program, Miami Says Art, and had different people around the city, whether it was politicians or cultural leaders, actually say art, and he would paint them. Marty, are you with us?
He's still muted.
Marty, do you know how to unmute yourself? There's a little button on the bottom that says mute. You need to click it.
Maybe if we unmute everybody?
I did. Let's try that. He's still not. Did we lose him altogether?
Marty, can you hear us?
Well, it's
Marty,
nice to hear your
take us.
voice. Well, let me start to talk.
All right, go ahead. 1964, this is.
I did this, I was doing undergrad work in New York at Parsons School of Design and learning my craft. And this was the first time that I had started to break down pieces of color, sections of color into hard edge painting. It was the first time I discovered that I actually had a vision. And it started me onto my life as an artist, forming a style. It was an important piece, and I like looking at it because it shows my growth. Putting that little patch of orange in my face was rather a daring step. And I think in my work, this is an important piece because it shows where I'm about to go. This is from 1976. It's my dear friend, Charlie Cinnamon, friend and mentor to many. Charlie was just one of the best guys in the world ever. The show, Charlie is Saying Art. The show I did, it was my first museum show at the Metropolitan Museum and Art Center, which used to be out on Kendall. And the show opened in December of 1976 and included 150 people that I photographed. Here are the Shacks, Ruth and Richard Shack, saying the word art. I thought it was a wonderful way to bring the cultural leaders together in the community. And I believe it was really instrumental in starting to give us focus, that we were a big community. My good friend David Vance, the most wonderful photographer ever. Another one of the Miami Says Art pieces. There were 30 drawings altogether and many photographs shown. And Barbara Farrow, my dear friend and fellow artist. And it was really exciting because the show was one of the biggest that Miami had seen up to that time. We clocked 2,000 people coming to the opening, which was unheard of. And I think it set Miami on its path to where it is and continues to be today. I'm very proud of the show. This is Arnold Layman. Arnold was director of the Metropolitan Museum and Arts Center, went on to become the director of the Brooklyn Museum for many years. And Arnold gave me the thumbs up when I went to say, Arnold, I have an idea for a show called Miami Says Art. Wonderful man. He and his wife, Pam, wonderful people. This is an installation from the retrospective that we did some years later, it's 2012. We did a retrospective bringing back the drawings from Miami Says Art. You can see them lined up there. Just a whole bunch of them. It's a chorus of people almost singing. How everyone says art, it just forms the most wonderful, if you just try it, those of you who are watching, if you just go art, it really forms a great little thing. It's a fun moment. And so that's one of our installations from the retrospective, which was held in 2012 and then was revisited again with other cultural leaders adding past and future in 2013. We opened Art Basel in 2012 and 2013 with the show. Oh, one of the reviews from Griffin Smith on Miami Says Art. Griff was the art critic for the Miami Herald in the 70s, a brilliant, brilliant writer, and turned out to become one of my dearest, dearest friends, and so bright, a real Southern lady, was as sharp as a tack. The invitation from Miami Says Art, the retrospective, which was held at the Marriott, and it was a real hoo-ha fun affair. I was so pleased. I didn't know if anybody would turn up, and my partner Tim was with me, and we were at the hotel, and the elevator door was about to open, and I said to Tim, what if nobody's there when the doors open? And he said, just throw your shoulders back. Come on, it's time for the Marty Kreloff show. And I threw my shoulders back, and hopefully we were surrounded by people all pushing and shoving and wanting to say hi again after a bunch of years. And it was a highlight moment of my creative life. I started to cry with pure happiness. This goes back to 1980 when I was in Miami and asked to design the film festival, one of the first film festivals that Miami had. And I used classical film stars from Cary Grant, Joan Crawford, Errol Flynn, Gloria Swanson, John Wayne, and Lana Turner, and a Miami director on the top with parrots on the megaphone. And I'm happy to say that this was accepted into the Museum of Modern Art in New York in their film collection, which was a highlight of 1980 for me, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
Another wonderful moment. In 1985, I was in Miami. I'd been living in San Francisco for a few years. When my mom died at the beginning of '84, I came back to Miami and became involved with the first AIDS organization and Health Crisis Network. And I was asked if I could come up with a fundraiser concept to bring people in and to raise money to help people understand and educate people in what was going on. We needed funds desperately, and Miami was not viewing AIDS as something serious. I'd been living in San Francisco and saw firsthand what was happening. And so I created this poster that you see. Nobody wanted to say AIDS. And so it was called Journey to Romance, a white party at Vizcaya. And you can see HCN up in the little Cupid's hat. And we opened at Villa Vizcaya, and it was a tremendous success. And we had our fingers crossed. We had no idea if it would be. Everyone was dressed in white, and happy to say it became an annual affair with people over the next 30 odd years coming in to raise money for AIDS organizations. This scene is from Miami Vice, and you can see some of my paintings in the background. The two stars of the show are seated to the left, and I was happy to have my work used on a few of the shows. And actually in the last season of the show, one of the episodes, I got to play a detective, which was really a hoot. Got to go through a roof and pull my gun and look like I really knew what I was doing.
I hope you recorded that.
Oh, yes, it's recorded. I had a lot of fun. I never thought I'd be on Miami Vice, but there I was.
Where was this filmed, this shot?
It's on the soundstage in Miami.
Okay, so it wasn't an actual club. Okay.
No, they built sets, and happily I was on 3 shows. They built sets around my work, which was so exciting.
How did they hear about you?
I was friends with several of the people. One of their art directors was a friend of mine, their budget director. Miami in the 80s was a relatively small place, and I just made friends with the people who were there doing the show. I was an artist. They were producing TV and art, and it was a natural thing to be friends with people who were creating art in our city. Jeffrey Howard was the first art director, and he created a wonderful vision of a pastel kind of film noir.
Right, which is Miami Vice, absolutely. And so
while I was living in San Francisco and I started to see my friends growing ill and dying from something they were then calling GRID. It hadn't gotten the name AIDS yet. And I was asked to come up with the first fundraiser in San Francisco for AIDS. And this is a transitional billboard. They're taking down a gay travel billboard on Market and Castro streets and putting up the fundraiser Gay Night at the Circus, which was a benefit for Kaposi sarcoma. And it was an important piece for many people in that it now started to raise money and awareness in AIDS, and we were doing something. We weren't just standing and saying, what do we do now? Money started to be raised. And for me, this was a turning point, a moment that said, yes, this is happening, and it's not about gay travel anymore. It's about saving lives. In 04,
jumping ahead, right?
What's that?
I'm jumping you to this. It's a pretty similar in style. I wanted
so that's okay. Well, we can jump. I know how to do it. In 04, I moved to Las Vegas, where I currently live, and I was asked to design the Jewish Film Festival poster. And what you see here is Vegas Vic, which is a really known icon here in Vegas. And I put one of Marc Chagall's fiddlers, and I have, instead of a moon in back of him, I have a reel of film. And if you look closely, I don't know that you can see it on here, but if you look closely in Vegas Vic's eye, I have a Star of David in there. So it's my little play on many, many things.
It's very interesting with the Chagall. You see almost the city view. Is that a city view on his legs?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So what was this proclamation?
We go back to Miami in 2012 and in 2013. I was fortunate enough to have a proclamation issued by mayor who came and said, this is Miami Says Art Day. And that was a wonderful, wonderful moment. Both times.
How did they decide to do Miami Says Art 2? How did that come about?
Well, Miami Says Art, the retrospective, was awfully successful. And what we did, we set up a photo shoot at Miami Says Art, the retrospective. And the following year, when I was invited back, we showed those photos that we took I hand colored the photos and worked with them to present a whole new concept And we had the people, the young people of the future, of the cultural future of Miami, along with current leaders. And so the Miami Says Art 2 was the next step, saying, now it's in your hands, youngsters, young people, take up this mantle, and here we go. It's your turn. We've set it up for you as best we could. Now, please, it's yours.
Was there new artwork made for that show?
Yes, there was.
And it was all yours, or did you have any?
At that point, it was all mine.
Okay. What can you tell us about your week with Esther Williams?
Oh, I had a wonderful week with Esther Williams. She was quite a trip. So sweet, Esther. We were signing posters. In 1994, I was living in, let me think, where was I? I was in Los Angeles. I was living in Los Angeles when I got a call from Miami, which has always been home to me. I really came of age in Miami. I've spent 25 years there. My folks are buried there. I feel that it's where my roots are. I was asked to please design a poster for the Esther Williams Film Festival, which Esther was going to be in Miami for a week, and she would participate at all of the hotels with her films being shown outside at the pools where she had been swimming in her movies, in many of her movies. And it was a great opportunity. I designed the poster. I spent a week with Esther Williams. We were like thick as thieves, whatever that may mean. But we were together like 24/7. And she was one of the most delightful people. I had grown up seeing all of her movies, and it was a wonderful, wonderful treat. And this Swim with Esther is the original artwork, but then Esther acquired it for her swimwear company, and they put in Swim with Esther, and this was the tag on all of her swimsuit designs that were carried by Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom's, etc. And we stayed friends for a long time. When I got back to LA, Esther was back, and she and her husband invited us, Tim and myself, up to her home in the hills of Beverly. And when we got out of the car, Esther was coming out of the pool in a big white robe, her hair was wrapped in a white towel. And she said, "Hi guys, go on in and I'll be in a moment." And when we went into the house, it was, oh, wow. There's Esther with Clark Gable, with Sid Charisse, with Elizabeth Taylor, all these photos. It was stepping into a dream. As a kid in Brooklyn, I was at the movies all the time, and there I was living my dream.
Amazing.
And Betty Garrett was with us as well, who was also a favorite of mine from 50s musicals. This is a button that I designed in the 70s as a little promo thing, and I've had many printings of them since. I designed this because I went on a trip to Russia in the 70s and gave them out to the good people of Russia who had no idea what this was. And I was stopped getting on the plane when we were leaving. I was stopped and I could not get on the plane because the KGB did not understand what this was about. And they said, "Is this like a thing for Bobby Kennedy?" No understanding of promotion of a commercial endeavor. And it was very hard to explain. I finally did explain. I got onto the plane. The following year, through the Metropolitan Museum and Art Center, Barbara Farrow and I went back to Russia and we led a tour. We led a group of 25 people. Joy, I know you're listening. You were among that group. And it was a most splendid thing. Again, I gave out these buttons, and walking into the Rossiya Hotel in Moscow, the concierge was wearing one of my buttons, which...
Is that coincidence, or he knew you were coming?
Not a clue. I said, wow. Yeah, Russia, I mean, Russia. And it was Soviet Russia. It was the Soviet Union at that time, and very, very frightening.
I should say, I can imagine when you were trying to get on a plane and
And
Did you want to
Kreloff is a Russian name. My grandparents all came from Russia. When I was coming in the first time, it was cold, it was the winter, and I had a yak coat on that I'd gotten at Orbach's and a rabbit hat. And the guard said to me at the airport, Kreloff is Russian name. You speak Russian? And I thought I'd be cute. And I said, "Niet." And that didn't go over well. They said, "Perhaps you will learn while you are here." And I said, "I'm only here for 10 days. I'm not that good with language. I don't think so." I got very nervous. And I realized there was no whimsy in the Soviet Union.
I can imagine.
My good pal became my friend, Cary Grant. From the film festival series, I had the opportunity to spend a day and an evening with Barbara and Cary Grant in 1985. My gallery at the time in Miami, where I was living, again, I came back after Mom died in '84. They sent over my print of Cary Grant to him, and he said he'd like to meet the artist. I was invited to his hotel, and it was pretty remarkable. I was having a drink with his wife, Barbara, when Cary Grant walked out with his silver hair in a yellow cardigan, gray pants, white shirt, holding my bio. And he said, "Well, this is quite an impressive resume, young man." And I said, "And you're Cary Grant." And so we both knew that at that point. And we smiled and laughed about it. I spent the next few hours with Cary and Barbara talking about art. He was a very avid art collector. We talked about David Hockney. We had the greatest time. And then they asked me if I would go over to the Gusman Theater where he was going to be doing a lecture that night. And I drove over with them, managed to sit with Barbara in the front row of Gusman, and was able to advise with some of the stage moves that Cary was making. I whispered to Barbara, I said, "Maybe if Cary did such and such," and she told him, and then she turned to me sweetly and she said, "Well, Marty, you're right up there with Hitchcock. You've just directed Cary Grant." You talk about a sweet lady. So he just was everything you'd want in a movie star. He was Cary Grant.
So you're an accomplished artist. You've been in Miami Vice. You've directed Cary Grant. I mean, that's
Was that a hoot? Is that a hoot?
That's quite a resume, right?
Yeah. This is from 1978 in Miami. I did an exhibition which opened at Omni called Miami Works, and it involved 16 commissioned paintings of the working people of Miami. Everything from a young gal at Burger King offering you your package of Burger King, to the Bee Gees who were recording at Criteria Studios, to Mayor Steve Clark, TV anchor woman Ann Bishop, to the lifeguard that you see, to Miami Dolphins Larry Little. I'd never painted a football player before, and to get this shot, I actually had him lean over me. I was on the field and I was under him shooting up, looking at him, and I said, "God, I feel like Sandra Dee." And he didn't laugh. And so neither did I, and that was the end of that story, but here's Larry Little.
So what was in Miami Works, how was that received? Was it like Miami Says Art?
It was really, to my joy, it was well received. There's 16 large paintings. The opening was great, but then the show toured around the state of Florida for a year, and I traveled with it at cultural centers, at libraries, and I lectured about what a great place Miami was to live, to work. It was a Chamber of Commerce dream to sell the story of what a great place Miami was at so many levels. We did the Camachos, who had their cigar factory there. We did the Teacher of the Year. We tipped our hat to agricultural workers. It was really a terrific show. It was a wonderful show that paid homage to Miami.
It's beautiful, beautiful. And this is your retrospective?
We're back now in Las Vegas. In 2016, I did a 50-year retrospective here in Las Vegas, and it was kind of overwhelming to stand in a room surrounded by 50 years of my work. It kind of takes your breath away, because as an artist, when you're working piece to piece, and collectively to see it all in one place is a staggering learning process, because you see where, as an artist, you see where you've gone. You see where you've learned. Some paintings are really seminal in your development, and it was a great opportunity to be among all that work. Sadly, it didn't include the works from Miami unless they were shown in photographs, because it's very expensive to ship work across country. But it did include work from LA and from Nevada.
How did the exhibit come about?
They invited me. It's, you know, they kind of ask me and I say yes. So 50 years is a long time, and that was 4 years ago. So I guess I've been professionally doing this for 54 years. I started drawing when I was a kid. Just at 5 years old, I started drawing, and my mother looked at my first drawing and she said, "Did you do this?" And there was no one else in the room. So I said, "Yeah." And I was fortunate in that my mom recognized my talent and gave me private lessons right away. And by 12, I was studying at the Brooklyn Museum, taking adult classes. I was, in my youth, a prodigy, but of course you outgrow being a prodigy and you become just talented as you grow older. By the time I got to Parsons School of Design in the early 60s, I was a talented student, and the prodigy was nice to say I was a prodigy. But Parsons was a great leveler, because I learned there were many other people in the world that had talent equal and above mine, and it was the most wonderful experience to be taught by world-class instructors. This was the invitation to my retrospective, and as you can see, the background has the painting of me when I was 20 years old, and the painting where I am somewhere in my 70s, a photo of me sitting in front of it. It was taken by my friend Brad Zucroft, who was a wonderful Pulitzer Prize nominated photographer. And I think that photo says it all. It's my life's journey as an artist. In the very bottom, you see my kabuki cowboy, where I've worked on a theme throughout, since the 80s, of combining East and West, Japanese art with American art. And that's been a recurring theme. I'm still involved with it, with my geishas, my kabuki players, and my sumos.
Were you trying different cultures, or did you know right away you wanted to work with the East meets West?
I was actually on the beach in Siesta Key, visiting my friend of many years, Thurza Jaycox. Thurza ran Grove House for many years in Coconut Grove. And I was reading Shogun, and I was looking at the water. And you know, the Siesta Key is a very spiritual place. And I was just lying on the beach, watching the water, and I started to see, the Japanese images were in my head from reading the book, and I started to see the Japanese image being shown to me in the American cartoon. If you look at a geisha and you look at olive oil from Popeye's cartoon and you see the hair, you know that there's a similar concept running through. The ukiyo-e, or woodblock prints of Japan in the 1800s, they don't have really words in them you're telling the story with image, and it's very specific image. And I started to see how the comics, the American cartoon, was really playing with that image in line and form. And my first painting, when I got back to Miami, I had a geisha leaning at the bottom of the painting, big painting, and she's kind of like this. And on top of her, I have Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Donald Duck's nephews, in giant hot pink tubes swimming out of the water. And my painting was called Pacific Overtures, paying homage to the great Stephen Sondheim. And I have gone on from there to combine an East meets West series, even using Mae West as one of my East meets Mae West concepts. Oh, yes. Well, this was in my studio here in Las Vegas. I'm painting Scream, or Janet Leigh in Psycho. And again, this was taken by my friend Brad Zucroff, and it's a rather intimate look on how art is created. You know, art, when it's shown in a gallery, is shown for everyone to look at and to hopefully enjoy, comment, be responsive to. But this really tells the story. When you're in the studio creating art, it's you and your creation. It's a rather lonesome existence. When quarantine first started and isolation, I think it was a tad easier for me because I'm used to spending my days alone, as most artists are. If you're creating, you're usually creating in that vacuum of you are in your studio working. And so I think this offers a really nice look at what the process is. It's you and your canvas.
And this is acrylic on canvas?
It is acrylic. I started in oil because acrylics had not been invented yet. When I was at Parsons, Liquitex just came out with acrylics the beginning of the 60s, and they brought them to the school for all of us students to use for free because they wanted us to try them, but they couldn't guarantee that acrylics would last. And I remember opening a tube of yellow acrylic paint, and the tube was like plastic. The paint was like plastic. And it really, I didn't start using acrylics until 1980, when I had a commission at a Boca Raton country club to do 20 paintings over a summer. And I realized that I could not produce 20 paintings in oil. They would not dry fast enough over a summer. And so my dear friend, fellow artist, Ann Kingard, who was working in acrylic, showed me how to use it. And I switched over to acrylics and have never looked back.
I can imagine. It's difficult, the oil with the process.
Oh, I had fans going when I was using oils because they had to dry. This is one of our most wonderful magazines here. It's for the Jewish population of Las Vegas and Nevada. It's David Magazine. It's been around several years. And they commissioned me to do several covers. This is one of Natalie Portman, and it's Starlets of David. And again, if you look at her earring, I have a little Star of David at her ear. And it has the 2012 Jewish Film Festival. We have a very thriving film festival going on here for numerous years. And she's just so pretty. I had a lovely time doing this painting.
Did you meet her also?
I didn't. You know, sometimes I get a chance to meet the people I paint. Other times it's just through photographs. Our dear, dear friend. That's on the left is my partner of almost 30 years, Tim Olson, and our dear, dear buddy, Estelle Getty. Estelle was like family to us. I can't say enough about her. She was one of a kind. Off screen, I have seldom met a more generous and funny person. I will always remember Estelle when we were at her apartment for one of her brunches, where she taught Tim how to make matzo brie in her kitchen. It was a lovely moment, and she was just as dear and as funny and as kind as could be. And I asked her once, when she would be over all the time, and I said, Estelle, you know so many big stars. When we're over at your house for your big parties, we're surrounded by stars at your place, but you come to our place, to all our brunches and such. How come? And she said, because you're an artist and you surround yourself with artists. She said, those people, they're television people. And Estelle had a background in New York of being an actor on stage. She understood the difference between being a Hollywood performer and being an artist. And I can't say enough kind things about Estelle. She also was the person who introduced me to Esther Williams. They were dear buddies. And so that all, life is a circle.
It's amazing.
This is my logo. I painted this of myself, and I've used the Japanese koi in many of my paintings, and it's just floating. This was my self-portrait in '06, and I kind of think it still looks like me. So right now it's still standing as my logo. If I change noticeably, or if you feel I have, you can write and tell me. I may do a new one, but this is where I am when someone asks, well, what's your logo look like? Voila.
Voila. Very special picture here.
Well, look at this. Here's Susan, Susan Gladstone, and the portrait that I was happy enough to and lucky enough to create of Susan. And it was a joy. And I had the most fun time in inventing that purple dress for her and purple highlights in her hair. And even though I know she's listening, she's a very beautiful woman.
When you create portraits, I mean, this one, have you met Susan before you created this portrait?
I had, and
do you feel like you pull the personality when you create portraits like this?
I try to do that. I try to become the person. It's a very intimate process, becoming the person that you're painting. I try it. It's almost, well, it is. It's a spiritual process that I look at many photos and try to see themselves as they see themselves. I was in touch with Susan steadily, asking her for the photos that she thought she looked best in, looking at the photos that I had taken of her that were not posed when I was in Miami, because she didn't know that this was being gifted to her. So I couldn't really take posed photos. But in every portrait that I've done, I look and look and look, because half of painting is looking. The other half is then producing. But I feel it in my gut. I feel that person. And you know, each portrait that I've done, and I've done hundreds over the years, I become that person during the process. And then when the painting is finished, it's almost like a love affair that's over, because that painting goes away and you have great memories of it. And it's just, but you move on to the next relationship, but you'll always remember that one. And so that's been my story throughout my creative life. They're great, you fall in love, and then it has to be that you move on, but you always hold that person dear in your heart.
It's beautiful.
Well, I just want to pipe in and say thank you to you and to Merlin Dan Weiss, who introduced us, and to the whole board of the Jewish Museum of Florida FIU, who gifted this to me in the honor of my birthday. And this is just after I stopped crying because I burst into tears when I saw it. It's so beautiful. I'm so honored to have it. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to do it, Susan. And Merle and Danny Weiss have been my lifelong friends. And, you know, as we go through life, we don't have a lot of lifelong friends that we love as much 40, 50 years later as we did when we first met them. And I've always loved Merle and Danny. They've always been there for me, and I can only trust that I've always been there for them. I love them.
It's beautiful. Marty, your story really, as I was telling our viewers earlier, has taken us from the beginning of really the late 60s of Miami to today. You've been you know, throughout the entire history of that, how do you feel it has changed since you began with Miami Says Art up until today? It's a long loaded question, but I mean.
Well, it's a wow. It's a wow. I think what's going on in Miami today is beyond my wildest dreams. Each time that I go into Miami for Art Basel or for another event, I'm just blown away by a city that thrives and recognizes art as a cornerstone of its existence, as something incredible, where the city becomes dedicated to art and artists. And I think it's very different. When I moved to Miami in 1967, the joke was that it was called God's waiting room. There was very little going on culturally, and I kept flying back to New York because I was missing theater, I was missing museums, and it's really wonderful to see what's happened. I stopped flying back to New York and said, hey, if you're going to live in Miami, don't fly back to New York, make a difference in Miami. And I'd like to think that Miami Says Art in '76 started to say, we're a community, and Miami's taken off beyond anything I could have imagined. And I love Miami, and my hopes for its future are as grand as can be, because it's pretty grand right now.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, so much. Everybody's opening museums here, left and right. They've seen it.
We're starting to see that in Las Vegas as well. I've been here 16 years. We have a museum in the offing. We now have the Smith Center, a large theater, which will reopen, as all will eventually. Culture is starting in a big way to find Las Vegas, and I'm happy to see that happening, because I was missing that when I first moved here. But much like Miami, I was prepared to watch it open and bloom as Miami did. And I hope that I'm a part of it and will continue to be a part of it here as well.
I love that you've been a part of so many different movements. You
know, it's been my joy and my pleasure. I believe in being connected with community. I think as an artist, if you live in a community, it's part of who you are to give back to the community. My mom many years ago said to me that, you know, with having talent, you have a responsibility, and that's to share your talent with others and to teach the next generation what you know. I've been a teacher for many years in many places, privately, universities, museums, street corners. I want to teach as much as I can to youngsters, to other people, because I know these things and I don't want to leave this heavenly coil without passing on as much information as I can. That's my job.
You're doing a great job, Marty. A great job.
Thank
Are you coming back to Miami to work on anything else here in the near future?
I do have, hopefully I will be back next to Art Basel and be able to do the show we've spoken about at the Jewish Museum of Florida /FIU to showcase a number of the pieces that I've done in Miami and some of the newer pieces that I've done in Miami that haven't been shown. And I am working on a show here in Las Vegas for the end of the year. Everything is so up in the air. I can only say that I'm in the studio working every day, and hopefully it will be shown and be able to be shared in the near future. We're also iffy as to what are the next steps, but as artists, we all continue to create and hope we can share that. And this is a great medium. This Zoom meeting has just wowed me, but it's a great medium to being able to share thoughts and visuals and love.
I think this town is ready for you to do a Miami Works #2. I mean,
Wouldn't that be a swell idea?
yeah.
So let's write that down and let's get to it then, Jackie.
I mean, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it. I want to host it.
Okay, I got it down. I got it down.
Well, that's great, Marty. I mean, usually people have questions and answers, and all I'm seeing here is just beautiful love pouring to you.
Oh.
I don't even have questions. I have excellent, wonderful, exciting. I mean, that's just beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Well, I've been really fortunate in my years. I've met a lot of wonderful people, and I've put out my love, and I've been really fortunate to have it given back to me by some of the finest people I could ever have imagined. My life has been filled with really great people who have been supportive of what I do and of my vision. You know, I can't say enough of the people I've met in all the places that I've lived. I started in Brooklyn, went on to Miami. I've lived in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and now Las Vegas. But Miami is where they said, yeah, baby, you can do it. And that will always mean the world to me.
I mean, I'm so proud to be a part of this community in Miami, this arts community.
Well,
I do have a question. Someone asked if you studied illustration at Parsons.
I went in, Parsons offered fashion illustration, which is what I went in for. And after 6 months, I realized I didn't want to be a fashion illustrator. I wanted to be a painter. And I got elected to the student board, the student council, and I campaigned for a fine arts department at Parsons. And by the following year, lo and behold, there was a fine arts department that opened at Parsons, and I switched my major over to fine arts. And so I started out in illustration, and I don't know that there's a big deal between illustration and fine art, except the concept. If you're given an idea by an art director, then it's your idea, his idea or her idea that you have to fulfill. If you're a fine artist, you're often working from your own concept of, I want to do this, this is my inner story. But there's a very thin line. I've seen illustrations over the years that can blow you out of the water.
Well, we have Jane Saltzman. Are you available to speak? Is Jane Saltzman is asking to have a question? Is she muted? I don't know. So if she can get it typed in, Jane, I will love to ask it. In the meantime, Marty, I wanted to thank you for coming on. It's really a pleasure, really a pleasure. And, you know, really, when I first became aware of your work and who you are, and I'm researching the changing environment of what is Miami's art scene, you really have just explained it all to us as the visitors. I mean, it's really starting. What was your comment you gave to me about the tall ships? How did that affect you in 1976?
Oh, when we had talked, in the bicentennial, I had an apartment out on Kendall, which Kendall and like 88th, it was the end of the world. I mean, it was just cherry, they grew tomatoes and strawberries in the fields next to me on Kendall and 88th. And I recall on bicentennial watching the tall ships come in and how everyone was so involved and engaged. And I remember walking out on my terrace and thinking, I wish there was something that I could do that would bring our community together like the tall ships did, where everyone would celebrate and the event would become more than the event. And like lightning, sometimes you get those little light bulbs that go off. Said, why don't I ask all the cultural leaders involved in the arts to say the word art? And that will bring them together. I can photograph them, turn them into drawings and go beyond that. And it was like, huh? And the next day, I met with Arnold Layman at the Metropolitan Museum. This was July 4th. I met with him July 5th. He said, can you get the show done by December? And I said, oh my God, this was a big undertaking. And I said, sure.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
that's how it came. It came about because I wanted to make something bigger than who we are individually. I wanted to show collectively we are more.
It's a community. A question came in about your time at Gussman.
Well, which time was it? Because I've been at Gussman numerous times. I did a show there of my work, all involving film, the paintings that I've done of film stars, which I was on the marquee, which was pretty cool. I've never been on a marquee, which said Kreloff on film. And Gussman was a great place. Years back, I got to meet Ann Miller there when she was appearing in Anything Goes. We went backstage and she was just lovely and dear. And I was interviewed with Maurice Gussman, one of the TV show, and you know, he is the man who invented the Trojan prophylactic. Is that known by all of your watchers and viewers? And so I was on a talk show with Maurice and with I think it was Gregory Hines, and it was cool. Gussman holds a lot of stories for me. I've seen great concerts there, and I actually know the Gussman family now. I'm friends on Facebook with the Gussman children and grandchildren.
That is really exciting. Okay.
It's been a good life. It's been an interesting life, Jackie.
Yes, I mean, it's been amazing, and we're really lucky in Miami to be having this, you know, history spelled out by one gentleman. I mean, that's really exciting. You know,
nice
you've done so much work for our community, and it's basically a time capsule looking at your pieces. Anyway, Marty, I wanted to thank you for coming on today and sharing your work with us today. It's really a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure. You know, this has been a dream. Thank you for today, and I thank all of you who zoomed in.
I mean, it's wonderful. Okay, thank you, Marty.
More fun to follow.
And I love that we're your first Zoom ever.
I'm no longer a Zoom virgin.
I love it. Let me close. September 3rd is our next program, and we'll be interviewing Billy Corbin, who is a notorious, excellent Miami filmmaker. He was a director of Cocaine Cowboys, and he does a lot of the 30 for 30 episodes on ESPN. So if you could tune in, that would be great. September 3rd. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching Thursdays at 3 with us. And thanks again, Marty, and have a wonderful week.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You too.